Welcome to the Fit Affiliate Podcast, where we talk about behaviours and behaviour-based conversations as it regards to CrossFit affiliates, affiliate owners and coaches. My name's Lisa Hetherington. I'm the co-host of the podcast with Tony Ronke and Chuck Bennington, the founders of Fit Affiliate. Today's episode is a great one. We talk about all the metrics that can help move the needle forward on your affiliate. Now, it can be really overwhelming. Different gurus and people will tell you, you need to measure this, you need to measure that, and you can get completely bamboozled by what are the basic things I need to measure to see what's important in my business and where it's going. This episode, Chuck and Tony do a great job of clearing the air, giving some basic structure for even just some basic metrics that you could start tracking today to get a handle on where your business is at. Remember, if you have questions, want to reach out, there's a link in the show notes below for a free call with Chuck and Tony. Use the code podcast to jump on that call. 1 hour, one problem, and they can get you sorted. Enjoy the episode. And welcome back to another episode of the Fit Affiliate Podcast. And once again, joined by the amazing pairing of Chuck and Tony. How are you, gentlemen?
That's good. I like how you overthought it, because you're like, fuck, what sequence should I use so that there's not an issue, but now I don't know what to do with my words.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to look like I have favorites now, but, and I like to give you a bit of hype at the start. So it was like, what am I going to build you up with today to make you feel good?
Always a highlight of the week.
It is indeed. All right, guys, I thought today we would talk about some of the critical metrics that go in that, affiliate owners should be thinking of. Maybe they're not aware of. Most affiliate owners, I think, have fallen into the trap of, I've got X amount of members, that makes me successful, or that's how I know I'm successful, when I have 300, 200, whatever the magic number is for that affiliate. And looking at some of the numbers that you guys consider as possibly more valuable and more indicative of the affiliate performance. And I guess from that, we'll go down a bit of a journey of, what can impact those numbers, that, from the client journey or, the identity that clients assume. So a bit to unpack today.
It's a lot. Man, we could do one of those things that's not really a what thing, it's a why thing. And that's really kind of the bigger piece to start on, because there's certainly no shortage of metrics to track. And I would venture to guess in this year of our Lord 2022, and with the advents of the internets and like all of the member management softwares and all the platforms and dashboards, there's already probably plenty of awareness of like what metrics are worth tracking and like what people have within their purview and look at from time to time. But the fact that they don't care a ton about them often is the bigger issue. And I think is like maybe a way to like shift the example. So big, a Peter Drucker quote that we're huge fans of is what gets measured gets managed. And because there's so much that's interrelated in affiliate, measuring anything consistently and intentionally and paying attention to it and trying to drive it in a productive direction would probably solve for a whole host of other unrelated things. And so like it's easy to talk about as average monthly membership or average revenue per member or lifetime value or anything like that. But what if you decided to track how long the average Fit Aid or Kill Cliff sat in that little mini fridge before it was purchased? Like, what is the time from it being stocked and inventoried to being purchased? Even if that was the only thing that you tracked, if that was getting better, would that mean that you were getting better with like cash management and cash flow? Would it mean that you were getting better with a more repetitive, provable nature of your retail process? Would you be moving more product? Would you generate more revenue? Would your members be getting like served a thing that benefited the whole? So it's not necessarily, at least in my view at this point in the conversation, we can go through like some of our favorites for sure, but why we need to track things consistently and pay attention to matters a whole lot more than what we track.
Do you find that when you have someone come through on their first consult that you'll ask them some of their numbers and they actually have no idea?
Yeah, all of them.
That does happen. But generally, at that point, most people are making a lot of guesswork go down, or it's like their most recent recollection of the last time they looked, because it's not a thing that they look at every single day, or at least consistently and deliberately every single week at the same time. So if you just pulled like, how much did I squat today? And you just wrote that down, but you didn't define like front squat, back squat, overhead squat, Metcon, like strength day, like what's going on? Like the numbers aren't super fucking helpful without consistency and intention. Anyway, I'm ranting.
It's all right. Tony, have you got anything on the metrics?
I suppose there's a lot to talk about, but like Chuck said, it's not really what metrics, it's why those metrics matter, right? I mean, one of the big questions that we get from a lot of the partnerships and the strategic partnerships that we have through FitFiliate, meaning like other providers and things of that nature, is, what metrics do we track across the board for all of our clients, and how can they be helpful in terms of assisting us with that? But the answer to that is that every client really ultimately tracks something different. I mean, there's some infinite similarities between them all, but kind of like what Chuck was saying, what you track matters very little in comparison to why you track it. So generally speaking, each one of our clients dictates the metrics that we manage, or we measure at least, in that most of you all have very different goals. You all operate in the same sort of industry and same, category, but your individual goals are very different. Some of you are trying to buy a gym. Some of you guys are trying to just fix your gym. Some of you guys are trying to buy a building. So, I mean, the list and the disparities is massive. And what gets tracked towards those, changes from case to case, specifically because what gets measured gets managed. So once you define the goal, it's easy to figure out what needs to get measured. That, I think, is where it goes wrong for most people. All of these numbers have been infinitely available to them since basically the inception of software, right? Like, even when it was like just MindBody was the only one that was out there at the time, even MindBody spit out a slew of statistics and metrics, right? Further to that point, even before MindBody, I mean, every business owner in the history of ever, I think at some point has had to suffer through QuickBooks, right? And you're just like, you go into QuickBooks and you're just like, within 2 minutes, it's just sheer overwhelm. You're like, there is every piece of data in here that I could ever possibly ever consider, and I have no idea what any of it means, right? And so fast forward to now, when there's a prevalence or a ubiquitous amount of software on the planet, and as such, all of these companies have attempted to, or at least simplify the process for the gym owner in terms of how they collect their information. Most of them just do a terrible job of it, but the real big problem is that much of the measurement of data is in the process of collecting the information for the data. And I think that is where a lot of people miss the mark. So it's not a lack of information. Everybody knows the numbers. Everybody's heard ACV before, but simply because they don't really understand what plays a role and what pulls on the lever of ACV, they tend to overlook it and devalue it. So, back to the root of it is, what metrics matter? Well, it's the goal that matters. And so, as you know from all these other podcasts, most affiliates are just really bad at goal setting, right? And they don't really know where they're going. So instead, they're just measuring where they are. Metrics really don't matter in that part, right? Like, sure, you're like, okay, this is where we're at, but lagging indicators are okay for certain parts of it. But leading indicators, meaning the things I need to do now that will create a future state later, are dependent upon the fact that you have an idea of where you're going. So each client dictates what gets measured, but as a general rule of thumb, there is some, best practices for affiliates to track.
So do you want to go through a couple of those that you think are, things that affiliate owners even initially could start to look at?
Well, it's not number of members, I can tell you that.
So
I would say that is a good starting point to get an actual accurate number of members who transact dollars with you. That one, like,
numbers and total members.
Right, yeah. Total members is fucking completely useless unless we're looking at like capacity limitations or like insurance. But it probably is worth knowing how many true paying clients you have inside of your business so that all of the other numbers have some context that actually makes sense. Because if you have somebody that doesn't pay any money, but their length of engagement is 6 years, well, that probably doesn't help us forecast how much people that are paying money for the service tend to stay inside the business. So, like, the data sets entirely should be probably based off of, more likely than not, like actual customers, but maybe not always. There's a whatever that would be client specific, but like as a good general first piece to look at is like, do you actually even know how many real true paying members you have? Question mark.
I mean, the second question that usually follows that is, where are you not looking, right? I mean, with our clients, at least, we tend to spend a lot of time when putting together their scorecard to get an idea of where they're willfully not paying attention, right? Because there's a certain degree of willful ignorance, so to speak, where they're like, these numbers make me feel bad. I don't want to pay attention to them. And so those would probably be the second most important thing that we redirect your attention to, not because I want you to suffer, but simply because you're not paying attention to them now. Therefore, any degree of attention spent on them is almost 100% going to result in some degree of improvement. Maybe some degree of discomfort, no doubt about that. But again, the sooner we start measuring it, the sooner we start managing it, and then you start solving for it. Because not paying attention to it does not get the monster out from underneath your bed. You just get really good at running and jumping on top of it. And now all of a sudden your bed is broken, and now you can't sleep there anymore. Now you're on the couch for the rest of your life, and now your back is broken and your neck doesn't work.
Yeah. And it doesn't get better.
Right.
And then from there, what would be the next focal area would be a little bit more dependent on the client, kind of where they're at in the game and what their more specific goals are. But it's just good overall general business considerations. Like, we know, how many actual paying people we have. Cool. How much does the average one pay? I think that's pretty logical. And from there, how long does the average one stay? Like, how many people do we have? How much do they pay? And how long are they a part of our business ecosystem? Those would be the three most important to generally wrap their heads around, as just general areas of things they're already aware of. But like Tony's saying, well, what are you not paying attention to at all? For a lot of people, really actually paying attention to length of engagement. Oh man, people stick around forever. No, you can just think about 3 or 4 shitheads that have stuck around forever, but it turns out that, like, if we actually look at the numbers, people stick around probably like 6 months. Ooh, that probably doesn't work in our favor. Cool, do we know when? I mean, maybe it's not as sexy and fun of like a scorecard number, because it's a really like kind of set it, do the long hard thing and figure it out, but like, do you know what a cost or a class really is? If you don't know that number, then you can't make any other good decisions in your business.
Yep. And I will say that was one of the big numbers that I worked out, that I thought I'd worked out. And then, I went through that process again recently and understood the value of doing it relatively frequently. It's like, wow, that number's way different to what you would think in your head. I know a lot of coaches and owners would just assume the cost to run a class is the coaching fee for that class. And that's where we affiliate owners can fall in the trap going, well, I'm running the class, so it's really zero cost to the business. But there's all those other little things that, you've got to pay to keep the doors open.
There's a lot of hidden boogeymen in how you calculate the numbers, or how you would want to calculate the numbers. I mean, generally speaking, the two most prevalent, probably the two most important metrics that are worth tracking would be ACV and LTV, right? Which would be your average client value and the lifetime value of a client. However, most affiliate owners are, one, unaware of how to affect positively or negatively those two numbers, or how to calculate those two numbers. And so without knowing those two parts of it, they become relatively useless numbers. They just simply become like a lagging indicator, like a measure of like some stuff that happened. And you're like, I guess that's my ACV now, or I guess that's my LTV. interestingly enough, everybody always likes to claim community is like their thing, right? Which makes their gym unique. And we've joked about this before that like if all of you guys are unique because of community, nobody's unique because of community, right? But like Chuck said, every affiliate owner believes that they're at least they want to believe that their clients stay for forever, right? But another number that's worth tracking is your attrition rate, really how often and what's the percentage of people who come in leave. And attrition is always a funny one because again, everybody thinks their community is their thing and everybody's super loyal and they're all these, people stay for forever and they come in, but like that number is always startlingly higher than they think it is when we calculate it for them, right? Like on a magnitude of order of like over 13% average. So they're like, oh, that's like 13% of their total population is leaving every single month. Uh-oh. Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of numbers that go into it, but respectfully speaking, it's again, where do you want to get to? Because like having a 13% attrition rate is really not even that bad, depending on what your model is, right? Where are you trying to get to? Are we trying to, just be a high turnover gym that's got big front end offers? Then 13% is probably not that bad because it's probably just going to happen. Again, knowing what affects the numbers and knowing why they matters much more at least than what metrics you measure.
So looking at those sort of metrics, what are some things that are important, I guess, for affiliate owners to step back and look at a bigger view of how their client journey can affect that, like you just indicated, like bringing, if people come in on a high front end offer versus let's just get them in, get them started model, free trial 2 weeks for $5 or whatever. How does that affect their longevity and their long-term relationship and their value to the affiliate?
Well, I think in a past podcast, at least I'm fairly certain, although maybe we just wrote about it, but we've talked about how you're in the utilization model. You're in the utilization business. So, the goal of your business is to get people to take advantage and utilize your services. So anything that you can measure that would track how well or how often people are utilizing your services would probably be advisable. And that doesn't really say much of total members in classes. It simply just says, really it's a metric of your lifetime value. Right. And so, if you're doing an objectively good job and people are inherently interested in the services that you put out and they're excited to take advantage of them and they're frequently reinvesting, they're likely going to stay much longer and spend way more money. Right. Because like an engaged client isn't likely to quit. I mean, sure, work or whatever can take them across the country, but respectfully, the person who's taking the most advantage of most of your services is the least likely to quit. I think we can all agree on that. Additionally, the person who's taking advantage of the most of your services is not only the least likely to quit, they're probably far more likely to repurchase, right? Because like they're receiving the most value of any client there because they're getting the most for their money. So they're far more likely to continue to reinvest because there's a mutual congruence of trust there and some loyalty. And so, lifetime value becomes the metric of success for a utilization model because that takes into account what is the average lifespan of your client, what is the amount of money that your average client spends, factored against how much money depreciation takes from you, of course. And so anything that you can do that improves the length of stay as well as the amount of money that they spend would certainly suggest that your utilization model is healthy, right? Like I think the average, without looking at the number of an intake consult, their average lifetime value is, if they even know what the number is, and most software calculates it for you, whether they do it correctly or not. Wodify, I'm looking at you, is a different conversation, but we can get sued for that. But the measure of success there being how long that they stay is probably the most important part of it. So it's about $1,800-ish, I think, for the average client value or the average lifetime value of an intake. But the average lifetime value for one of our clients, not that we're just that much better at it, is well over $3,500. right? Like, and that's not because we come in and we jack up your rates or we do anything else. It's just that as soon as you start measuring and managing that number, it's not a very hard number to move, right? And then but what's valuable about it too is not only is it a metric of how well people are utilizing your model, it's a metric of, wow, each client that comes in is not $100 or $200 membership. They're worth several $1,000s. As such, so are they when they leave, right? So, that's probably one of the more important ones. And there's a lot of factors that play against it. But if you want to know how to get better at utilization, track your lifetime value.
And that was a really good lesson for me when I started down this path, is then explaining that to my coaches, going, you piss off Tony in the 5 a.m. class and he leaves. There's, it's not just, oh, well, he's gone. It's $50 a week or whatever. It's, you've just lost $5,000 or whatever for how we would have had him in it. That was a profound conversation when I had that with my team, to go, it's not just a member. It's, $5,000 has just walked out the door for the length of time that they would have been here.
Yeah, no, looking at things through the lens of LTV changes an enormous amount of the game. And then also being able to understand how you can influence LTV and then what that really means for both the client, like the business, the owner, the coach. I mean, I guess all parties. So the earlier example of that, that fit aid, how long does a fit aid stay on the shelf? If you moved it from 2 weeks progressively shorter day by day to where it had a 1 day gap for an average client, if that meant that they bought another 2 fit aids a week, what do you sell a fit aid for over there in the world's most dangerous fucking playground?
We sell them for $5.50 each a can.
Okay, so we'll build it off we'll go 110. All right.
Yeah.
Now I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And then what do we want to say the average length of engagement is?
You'd say, if you average it out, it's, anywhere from, let's go 18 months as a round number.
Okay.
I like Chuck Bass.
Said 18 months. Well, assuming that of those 18 months, the average one has 4.3 weeks, because that's how fucking math works. And they bought another, if you could get the average client to buy another 2 fit aids a week over the length of their engagement, over that 18 months, that's $851.40.
Yep.
And so
that's just for one.
Beginning of the conversation, it's like, if you just picked some metric to actually pay attention to and then figure out what are the variables that makes this metric better and worse, these things being related tend to solve for themselves.
Yep. And I think that was one of the big lessons, is that having my team understand that, encouraging, or not encouraging, but, we want our members to buy whatever it is that they need from us, because it helps that metric along. It's not just we're selling to them for the sake of it, but it's, we can give them the best advice and the best, source the best item for them, but it has a bigger piece to play in that LTV number and the, your week-to-week ACV as well. And them realizing that it's not just about, you're just pushing protein. No, there are bigger things at play behind it. We want to upserve to our customers, but B, it has long-term benefits for everybody.
Yeah, and the long-term benefit for the client is the thing that I think most gym owners and coaches struggle to focus on, because as soon as you start making it to where we build awareness around the business side of things, they feel like all of a sudden they're at some type of ethical crossroads of sales versus service or helping versus transacting. It's like, no, all of these things are necessary. All these things already were happening. All of these things will happen. You just started actually paying attention to the numbers attached to them for the first time. And how much better are all of your clients that decide to actually do the tracking thing with their workouts, right? Like, how many people come to the gym forever, make no progress, and you're like, well, you're not tracking anything. They're like, well, I don't really like to. I don't know why that matters. And you're like, well, fucking humor me, Susan. Track all of your shit accurately for 2 weeks. She's like, oh my God, in these last 2 weeks, I've become a completely different human. You're like, interesting. Fucking interesting.
Well, the second that people start even tracking what goes, what they're eating for like a day, then suddenly I eat really healthy changes. It's like, actually, I don't.
So much of it is a measure of identity, right? So it's like people like us do things like this. And what's interesting about the metrics in business is that the people who are referring to, affiliate owners, they obviously understand the value of tracking their metrics in fitness and nutrition, right? Because people like us do things like this. And it's not so much that we track those things that because we're obsessed with trying to make it to the games or wherever we're trying to get to. It's just that we know that objectively having an idea of what our scores are in fitness dictates or predicates our intensity. It also suggests, despite how we may be feeling today or tomorrow or otherwise, based on our performance, we know that we are getting fitter or we're not, right? And that in and of itself forces us, doesn't so much force us, but certainly nudges us to continue to keep playing the game, right? Like, the first time you get an 8-minute frame, you think that was the hardest thing you've ever done. And then you see somebody do it in 3 minutes and you're like, well, fuck me. Right. And so you objectively try to improve that score over and over and over again. You're not trying to improve thrusters or kipping pull-ups per se. You're trying to improve the combination of those two things for the intended result of having a sub 3-minute Fran. But objectively speaking, that's one of the reasons why like someone like me found CrossFit, hated it. It's awful. It's the worst thing I ever did for 49 minutes of filthy 50, right? But 16 years later, I'm still here for the first time in my life. I mean, there is actually nothing I've ever done in my entire life, ever, that I have done for as long as CrossFit. No career, no business, no personal relationship, nothing. Yeah,
you got like washing my ass, brushing my teeth, eating some apples. There's not a whole lot of things I've done longer.
There's quite literally nothing. I mean, even school borders on that, because I would say that the last 4 years of school for me were like, they were not attended. Let's just put it that way. They were a necessity. So like, something kept me there. And what kept me there was that objectively speaking, every time I walked in the gym, no matter how I felt emotionally, psychologically, whatever, there was a score and it was going to go on the board. Right. And like, one, that meant that I was responsible for that score, but two, everybody else is going to see that score, right? So like there's something that drives you there. And so we get it. And then you get introduced to nutrition reluctantly, way, way later in your journey of fitness because you're like, no, I just want to get really good at throwing myself on the floor over and over and over again. That's going to give me, the nutrition, the fitness that I need. And then inevitably you realize that like, fuck, the last couple of minutes of my Fran score are not about the measure of my thrusters or my kipping pull-up. It's about my body weight. It's about my nutritional choices and my energy system. So you start doing that thing, right? You start tracking the food you eat. And most people, objectively, when they get a grasp of nutrition, they all try to do it the opposite, right? We're like, I'm just going to do a whole third. So I'm just going to stop eating stuff. I'm going to track what I eat, right? And then like, it doesn't matter who it is. You inevitably end up to the point where you have to realize that if I'm going to make a marginal improvement or otherwise, I'm going to have to track this thing. Kicking and screaming, I got to get out the scale and I got to weigh my chicken breasts and my broccoli and make sure I'm getting the right amount. But objectively, what comes out of that is that you learn for maybe the first time ever how to truly take control of a thing, a task that for 99% of the world, they have no control over, right? They just find nutrition to be, correlative and not positive. So we know that the people who are listening to this know that, yet there's not a real interest or willingness to track metrics in their business for the same reason that they achieve success in both fitness and in nutrition. If those two things work there, I'm not sure why you don't track it in business. And so the last kind of piece of this that I think is one of the reasons why people don't track in business is that they don't really know how to track it. So they know those numbers exist. They're out there. They live in the in the bubble of business, so to speak, but they're readily available on the dashboard of whatever software they use. They log in and that's it. And so just like fitness, the thing that largely probably changed your life was the physical task of writing and recording what you just suffered through, thinking through it, maybe making some notes or otherwise, but having to add up the reps, having to add up the weights, etc., allowed you to feel like you had some degree of more control over those numbers. If you just finished a workout and a computer spit out what your output was, it would still be better than nothing. It would still probably be fun, but it wouldn't be as beneficial on a day-to-day basis as the simple act of physically recording it. And so one of the reasons I think people don't record a lot of their metrics in business is that it's all so automated at this point, they don't think to do it themselves. They don't get out the pen and the paper. They don't add up the math. They don't do the division and the multiplication. And I get it. Numbers are scary. I fucking hate them too. But the simple act of collecting that data, spreading it out, and then adding it up and multiplying it out, whatever it is, and then getting the number is, well, it's dopamine and serotonin inducing. And I think that's having it given to you. You don't get those two things. You're just like, well, we sucked this week, right? But having been collecting that data, I find that the clients seem to have much more reward from it than otherwise.
Well, it's that whole thing with it where you actually physically write something down, you create that greater connection, mind-body connection and understanding of it, rather than looking at a screen and go, okay, I've got this length of time. But when you actually have to go through your bank statement and go, what was bought, what was not bought, and your reports, it really gives you a different perspective and meaning on it, rather than just, I'm just going to recite a number that's on a screen to me.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not telling you, anybody's listening, that they got to become their bookkeeper or their accountant. I'm not telling you got to dive deep into the back end of it. I'm just saying that for the same reason you don't need to be a mechanical engineer to understand the work output and capacity that happened in a workout, is the same reason you don't need to be an accountant or bookkeeper to understand the value of physically just looking at your expenses, looking at your income, and then factoring them against each other.
Yep.
It's going to make an improvement. There's no way that it can't.
Well, once you're aware of it, you can see where the holes in the boat are.
Yeah, and I think another part of it too that a lot of people get fixated on that paralyzes them is, just they don't know how to calculate it, or they don't really know what the number means, or they're unsure of whether or not it's the right number. But, any metric is your own metric. How you track it doesn't necessarily matter, as long as that you are in fact tracking it. It's your 400-meter run, right? Like, how you calculate ACV matters very little in comparison to that you do calculate your ACV, right?
And do it the same way.
Right, because your 400-meter run at the gym is certainly not an Olympic 400, but it's the only 400 that you and they are going to run. So anytime you get faster in that same run, you're getting better. Same thing with your calculations.
Yeah, even if your food scale isn't accurate, if you're progressively eating a greater weight of vegetables, you're probably moving in a better direction than you were.
Moving it forward. So looking at all those numbers, and they're really, it shows the trajectory of your business. And clearly, as affiliate owners, we didn't open our gym to go out of business or not be, to stay open and live our missions. That's got to be the ultimate goal. What are some things that we can think of, like when we talk about retention and strategies around that, but even around the identity that we can create for members in our affiliate? Like, I know there's a few gyms going, well, I don't need to affiliate anymore. I'll still keep doing what I'm doing, but we won't be called, CrossFit Chuck. Now we're just going to be Chuck's Clang and Bang, and it's still going to be the same thing anyway. So are there things to consider? That no one wants to do Chuck's Clang and Bang?
I don't know. It's like Tony said earlier. It's like we were always super happy to maintain our affiliation on principle alone, because at no other point had we found a thing that allowed us to solve for nutrition and fitness for our whole fucking life. Vanessa and I were joking about it this morning. We did a workout that was it was runs, kettlebell snatches, and what the fuck else did we do? Oh, lateral squats with a med ball. Those got deceptively bad with, the runs and kettlebell snatches. Anyway, what is it? It is just a triplet of basic fucking modality stuff, 12-minute AMRAP.
Mm.
Prior to CrossFit, I would never have known or had the skill of coming up with a workout like that. I would still be the poor, young, frustrated me trying to look through muscle and fitness or men's health for like a workout program or a routine to do. Because you have the ability to go and open Chuck's Clang and Bang and you know how to fucking program and you know what a thruster is and you know how to snatch and people in your fucking purview know about things like muscle ups and handstands, that's why you pay your affiliation, because fuck you. That's just our opinion and view and our being me and my wife. And so like for us, it was like CrossFit, it changed our lives immeasurably for the rest of our lives. And like, you know what? A recurring annual investment of $3,000. Yeah, dude, small price to pay for a better life than I ever could have even imagined, and better friends, business opportunities, growing as an entrepreneur, traveling the world, like everything it gave to us. I'm happy to play how I have viewed my part in contributing to the ability of the thing to move forward.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's that. I know when I've done many different things, from strongman to powerlifting and everything in between. But it's that going into the CrossFit gym, you're all wearing CrossFit Chuck t-shirts, and you're all part of something. Really does build that, not so much the overused term community, but it builds that sense of belonging in that tribe. Which, if people belong and they feel like that they're part of something even bigger than them, they're going to want to stick around for a little bit longer rather than just going, that you're a generic face.
Yeah, it's identity.
Identity will always be the largest predictor of success, right? I mean, and I think that we've talked about identity other times too, but lots of people believe that identity is a byproduct of actions, but identity is simply just a choice. You can choose an identity, and it's a hell of a lot easier to choose an identity when you can see a collective image of identifiable people of interest, right? So what's unique about CrossFit gyms in general is that, and I've been around the world, so I can say this with certainty, I can walk into any gym, any CrossFit gym, anywhere in the world, regardless of language or language barrier, and I can find the same cast of characters, right? They got different names, they got different complexions, different skin tones, but they perform the same, they act the same, they cheat reps the same, but it's okay. But the actions are the same because people like us do things like this. And so in regards to whether you should or should not affiliate, like what you're offering them is not what you're paying in terms of your affiliate license and what you are or are not getting in return. What you get in exchange for being a part of that community is a beacon, right? You have this opportunity to be able to provide people an identity that will literally save their life, right? Like I have nothing against the people who quote unquote are the community fitness gyms or whatever they are now. But what you are robbing people of is something larger than themselves, right? Coaching is the transfer of belief. And for most of people that come through the door, it's our job to get them to believe in themselves as much as we believe in them. Right? We're able to believe in them because we have hundreds of cases of people just like them who will succeed. Right? I know that I can make them better regardless of what name is on the front of the building. But what they need is something to believe in those times when they lose that belief. By being a part of a bigger picture and a bigger brand and a bigger identity, it's when those dark days come and those moments of soreness and those failed workouts and those, those missed objectives, simply being able to say, I'm a CrossFitter is one of the ways that keeps you in the lifeboat, right? Like it's not always going to be smooth sailing. It's not going to be easy seas. And regardless of how you perform in your workout and objectively feel about yourself, like some days it's just hard. And sometimes it just feels a lot easier to say you're a CrossFitter. Right?
Yeah.
And that sounds, very altruistic, but it's the truth. I mean, as somebody who's made it 16 years in this community, it's certainly not because I'm a great CrossFitter. I never made it to the games. I didn't go to regionals. I had those aspirations once. Thank God it didn't pan out for me, but I should have went in 2009 when all I had to do was book a plane ticket, right? Yes, that's been the opening joke of every seminar I've ever taught ever. But
and that's called opportunity cost, bitches.
Yeah. But the reality is
athlete in our bio.
what kept me here wasn't the scores truly, it was the identity, right? And those scores are what helped me keep that identity. No matter how I felt about myself, because those numbers were getting better, that's all that mattered. And because I was a part of something bigger. So that's the reason. The other side of it, though, is that, as an affiliate or as a gym in general, utilization is the model that you're in, and loyalty is the currency of that. And every affiliate would consider most of their clients to be very loyal. They espouse all the time, my clients are loyal. Loyalty is not that they're a repeat purchaser. Loyalty is that they will stay with you, even though a cheaper alternative pops up. They'll willingly pay you more. That's when you know you have loyalty. Or they'll stay with you when you do something stupid, because you're going to do something stupid, right? But they're loyal to you because you've changed their life. And that's the same fucking reason that they all should have stayed affiliated when something quote unquote stupid happened, whether you thought it was stupid or not. It's because loyalty starts with your decisions. And if you want your clients to be loyal, you just have to take a look at whether or not you've been loyal.
And I think that's a perfect way to round it out. Unless you've got anything else to add on that one, Chuck. I think that's
that was really good. I mean, I wanted to say more until he finished it so well, and now at 40 minutes in, it feels fucking weird to try to go any other piece of it. So I'm good to end there, and we can carry some of the energy and vibes into the future.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a really good way to end. But I think the big lesson out of today is if affiliate owners.
It's super short because it ties the whole thing together. If you're fucking on the fence about your numbers and your affiliation, all that, run the numbers on how many people need to be in your gym because it is affiliated in order to pay for the affiliation. You realize that it's literally 1 to 2 people a month based on nearly any ACV that most reasonable gyms have. And you think are 1 or 2 people here because it is a thing of something that's a part of a piece larger than myself, this town, this community? Then it probably is objectively paying for itself already. Anyway.
So I think it's, if affiliate owners can pick something to measure and then do it consistently and then look at the things that can move that needle for them, I think that's a powerful first step. If some of the numbers are scary, well, just got to start.
It's like everything, right? I mean, I guess this is the closing statement I have. In terms of the original question, which was the metrics, you have to define why you need to track metrics. Set your goals, figure out where you're going, create your vision, figure out what's there. Then step 2 is how, right? Once you've defined your goals, you need to figure out what needs to be measured to ensure that you are on track to meet those goals. Whatever that looks like, doesn't really matter how you're going to measure it. Then, lastly, is what metrics matter in regards to that. Don't start with what, or you'll never end up at that why. And that's really what it comes down to. And yes, you've heard that 14,000 times on this. But step 1 is why. Step 2 is figure out how. Step 3 is then decide what.
Awesome. Good chat today, gentlemen. I've really enjoyed that one and lots of good takeaways in that. So we will wrap that one and I'll talk to you on the next episode.
I'll be there.
Thank you, my friend, for listening to the Fit Affiliate Podcast. If you would be interested in hopping on a free call with us to just kind of chat about what you think your problems are and what you think the gap is between where you're at and where you want to go, we can see if maybe we can help you along that journey, figure out if we're all a good fit to do some sweet things together. So click the link, set up a consult. Let's help you identify some problems that we can mutually solve.